Hi everyone, Diablo 4 has got a pretty massive patch here regarding balancing and Nightmare Dungeon improvements. This is the stuff that I have teased already in the Diablo 4 developer campfire chat that I did the other day. And it is actually a lot of different changes, as you can see here. So I'm going to talk you through them. I have the link in the description if you want to read up on some of the details, but yeah, it's quite long and I'm not going to read everything word by word now. They have done a lot of bug fixes, a lot of other like small fixes. But the big things you need to know is Nightmare Dungeons are incredible now. So I actually went in and tried them out. So first of all, you can TP to Nightmare Dungeons now by clicking on the icon on the map. So you can see this here. You just go click on the sigil. It will activate the Nightmare Dungeon. And then you can click on the map. So I had a reaction here to immediately teleport to the waypoint. But you can actually click on the dungeon icon, just like a waypoint, and you will teleport there. Now, it puts you in front of the dungeon, not inside of the dungeon, so there is still this extra loading screen in the middle. I'm not exactly sure why, but at the very least, you don't have to travel there. So that alone is already a pretty massive buff to Nightmare Dungeons, at least for the faster builds. I guess it doesn't really matter too much for the slower builds, but yeah, now you're right there. If you don't want to travel on your own, you can just TP there and you're in a dungeon in like 15 seconds or so, instead of like a minute or two sometimes. So that will already speed up leveling quite a lot because, well, personally, I have been doing Nightmare Dungeons almost exclusively and I have not really been abusing these like normal dungeon farming strats, group farming strats and all that stuff. I just had fun with this and now it's even better. So this will absolutely be the meta now. I think that normal dungeon farming is kind of dead and Nightmare Dungeons is the way. But that's not even the best part. They also significantly buffed the XP rewards inside of Nightmare Dungeons, which is even better than the no travel. So they increased it by 80%. So I checked this out. I did some testing. It's 80% more XP for both the closing and for the killing the monsters. I have a few numbers that I collected here. So I did a tier 32, which is equivalent to my character's level 86. And then I did the same outdoors, basically in a non-Nightmare Dungeon scenario. And the numbers were all exactly 80% higher. People in my chat also tried it out and I heard the various numbers, like people farming like tier 30s, tier 40s, tier 50 dungeons or so. They were getting like 2-3 million XP per run. And well, if you do these dungeons pretty fast, and most of these dungeons on a good build can be completed in even as little as like 2.5 to 3 minutes. But even like a 5-minute run or so, giving like 2 million XP will quite reliably lead to like 20+ million XP per hour. And this means that, for example, here at my level 86 character, I need 14 million. I would get like 1.5 level ups per hour. I think I could actually farm something like 2 level ups at this point and even 99 to 100 in less than an hour. So this is how crazy it will be. So this patch has just significantly cut back the time that you need to level up to 100. I know that a lot of people were kind of like getting a bit exhausted from the grind. Now I've been doing it for the 4th time now, almost to 100. And well, with this Nightmare Dungeon stuff, it's going to be much shorter. So you can definitely expect to speed it up by at least 50%, I would say, even if you include like campaign and renown farming and all that stuff. So I think something like solo 1 to 100 on a twink at least can be done in as little as like 50 hours or even faster. They also did some other buffs for outdoor content, so not just the Nightmare Dungeons. So we have the Helltide chests provide more experience. I didn't actually know that they give experience at all, but I heard some numbers from chat and it wasn't really impressive, apparently like 50k or something like that, which is like nowhere close to what you can get in Nightmare Dungeons, and it takes a while to actually farm up the cinders for this. So yeah, not really that promising here. They also buffed the whispers. I heard something like 100-200k per whisper. I guess it may depend on the type of whisper that they do and how much grim favor you get. So yeah, maybe a few 100,000 or so, depending on the level and what you do. Also not exactly hot. The thing is that I believe that this patch has definitely shifted the balance more in favor of Nightmare Dungeons and away from normal dungeons and also outdoor content. So I think even those buffs here are not enough to really make this outdoor farming worth it. And from a leveling perspective, of course, you have other rewards there like Helltide, giving you Forgotten Souls, giving you drop-only elixirs and stuff like that. And Whispers, well, I think this is going to be even worse than before because they were probably just not buffed enough, in my opinion. But we'll see. I'm going to try this a little bit. I have a bit mixed feelings about this. I think that the open world content is actually really cool and I would like to see more stuff in the open world. So more reasons to go there, more reasons to try to find something there. Maybe with seasonal content this can be solved. I could imagine that a lot of seasonal content is actually going to be placed in the open world because it's relatively scarcely populated right now. So there's definitely a lot of room for that compared to Dungeons, where I don't really expect as much seasonal content. So maybe this is kind of like the reason there. Another nice bonus is that the Hell-type bosses have been buffed with better loot. So I guess it's just like more high-level stuff on average, I guess. And you also can use your weekly bonus cash from the world bosses now at any level. Now kind of balance changes. I'm not going to go through every single one, but there are a few highlights here. I should mention that there are actually no nerfs and also a lot of missed bug fixes that would reduce player power in this patch. So that will definitely happen at some point, I think. But yeah, stuff like Grizzly Rage is untouched. Stuff like Bone Spear is untouched. The Piercing Venoms is bugged right now. It does way too much damage. Also, the Earthen Bulwark right now is like really buggy and does way more damage than intended. So there is definitely some stuff coming later, I guess. But for now, rejoice, everything is just better. Notably, they buffed a lot of the basic skills, so the early game for basically all classes will feel a lot better, because especially on, you know, level 1 to, let's say, 50 or so, in the early game, when you don't really have like good resource management and, you know, good cooldown management and stuff like that, you use the basic attacks quite a lot until usually later you shift them out for something better, or you try to just not use them as much. But you can see that they buffed the damage of a lot of these here. So Lunging Strike on the Barb is an example, 10% more damage. Also, you get like 1 more Fury. And this might not seem like such a huge buff, but 1 more Fury, it adds up. You will feel it just being a lot more smooth when you start out a new character. And for example, when Season 1 comes with the 5 skill points that you get from level 1, with the Renown that you get from Exploration and Altars, it's gonna feel quite smooth to level right from the start. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction, because the early game is quite slow compared to the late game, and those basic attacks are generally just kind of worthless, especially in the late game. And I don't think that these buffs here will really solve that issue. I don't think we're really gonna see like basic attack builds like popping up everywhere now. And these basic skill buffs actually affect all classes. Almost all of them got a buff, so that's kind of cool to see. Some other notable buffs here for the Barb is Kick is a lot better, much lower cooldown now. They also have more vulnerable chance on Flay. With a two-handed weapon, you can actually get 30% vulnerable chance on Flay now. That is actually relatively solid, I think. So this might help out a lot on some builds. They buffed Iron Skin. They buffed the ultimates here, Call of the Ancients, and Iron Maelstrom has a 45 seconds cooldown now. I'm actually really pumped to try to make a Walking Arsenal build now. So I'm actually considering starting a Barb next. So we'll see. And they also did a few changes to some of those legendary powers. So on the Barb, you see that all of the flat powers have been buffed a little bit, like the Leapquake stuff and the Dust Devils. They're all like very undertuned. I'm not really sure if this is really going to make them a thing, but seeing a bit of a bump up there is definitely the right step. For the Druid, we also have a bunch of buffs to most of the generators, besides Storm Strike, which was pretty universally used in almost every build, I guess, with the vulnerable time, etc. It was just way too good, I think. And with like some improvements here, especially on the Spirit Generation and some of those extra effects, it can be quite nice to use some others. And then they have also massively buffed Lightning Storm and Shred. So Lightning Storm has a 6-second timer now instead of 4 seconds. I think it's going to make the build a lot more smooth to play. I think it's a really great change, because it's like stacking up the Lightning Storm and then like casting it into nowhere every once in a while is very annoying in my opinion. So that's great to see. Then Shred just got a lot more damage, some healing, etc. They buffed the wolves a bit, especially the fortified chance is quadrupled. So I guess I'm not really sure how well they survive, but if you need some source of fortify, then that is actually a really good choice now, I believe. They buffed Hurricane, it's not 17 damage anymore. We have some other buffs here to some of the ultimates. Basically all of the ultimates besides Grizzly Rage were buffed a little bit. Not sure if that's really enough, but at least you can think about it, you know, a bit more compared to Grizzly Rage, at least on some builds. And they even buffed some of the ultimate passives here, like Bestial Rampage. This passive is really a powerhouse now, so if you manage to activate that, that's a lot of damage, a lot of attack speed, can be pretty nice. And interestingly, they also buffed Nature's Fury to 30%. This is the passive that allows you to trigger free spells of your opposite type. So I think this can actually go really crazy with Crone builds and with symbiotic builds and stuff like that. So let's see. Then we have the Necro, another round of buffs. They even buffed the Corpse Generation on stuff like Reap, so that kind of surprised me. I felt like this was already like one of the best basic attacks, but okay. Then they also did the same with Decompose. We have a lot more corpses now. They buffed everything here. Then they even buffed Sever, so especially the return damage got a really nice boost here. They buffed Bloodlands a bit, you get overpowers every 6 casts. Not sure if that is really enough to make Bloodlands like a real OP build or something, but it helps, I guess. They buffed a bit of Bone Prison here. Nothing really crazy, but yeah, some other like tuning here basically that happened. And one really neat thing though that I have not seen in action yet, but I think it's going to be really cool, is that you can kind of control your minions with curses now. So you cast curses and your minions will attack those targets. So this might be some kind of solution to like the lacking AI tools or the lacking like, you know, pet controls, so to say. You have a curse in your build and you just cast a curse and you can actually target a certain enemy or so, or a certain group of enemies at least, instead of your minions just going like everywhere. So that is really neat. They also buffed some of the key passives here. I'm not sure if there's really anywhere close to enough to make them like more worthwhile. I guess like a full minion build goes for Kalans, and then you have Rathmas Vigor. I don't know about that. I think there's a general problem with overpower in the game, so that this stuff is not exactly helpful, but okay. And they also buffed this fast blood aspect here. So you have a bit more blood orbs now, and this is a legendary aspect that allows you to reduce your ultimate cooldowns with blood orbs. So this is especially a buff to the non-Bone Storm ultimates on Necro, I think, because Blood Wave already produces its own blood orbs, and just in general, you already reset Bone Storm quite easily, and now you have another way of reducing the cooldowns. It's pretty nice. Then we have the Rogue here. We got a buff to everything that's not Puncture on the basic skills. That's expected. Puncture is like primarily used for almost every build, and they're trying to beef up the others a little bit, which is kind of nice. And especially the primary Heartseeker. This can be maybe a bit of potential for like a basic attack build now, I think, but I'll have to do some testing on this. At least it can be like a fun, maybe not really meta alternative, but 75% damage on the second target, that can definitely lead to some potential at least. They also buffed the chill caltrops, so they will freeze after 4 seconds instead of 5 seconds. That is pretty neat, so you can like much more easily get the frigid finesse multipliers and stuff like that. They buffed the smoke grenade a little bit with a shorter cooldown. That is kind of neat as well. I really like Smoke Grenade actually, but I felt like it was usually not exactly worth putting into the build, exactly because of the cooldown, and this makes it more consistent, so I'm quite excited to try this out. Slight buff to Rain of Arrows, so that goes a little bit in the right direction already. I'm sad to see that they didn't really change the mechanic of, for example, how fast the animation is, or that the knockdown happened on the second wave instead of the first. I would have liked to see that, but at least it helps a little bit, I guess. And they also buffed Close Quarters Combat now. This is like a really, really strong passive. And Umbra's passive, which I find to be one of the best defensive aspects on Rogue already, it was buffed, interestingly. So it has a 60% chance to trigger now instead of 50. And even buffed to Eyes in the Dark, the Death Trap Unique Pants. Just vendor them, guys. And then we have Sorcerer. So kind of same story as Rogue. Everything besides Arclash got buffed. It's in fact the damage on Spark actually got a massive buff here with 2% more. This is like a relative buff of 25% damage on Spark. So some of those numbers may seem like a small improvement, but you have to see the relative buff is actually pretty massive. You also have some nice boosts here to Charge Bolts and Incinerate, and even Fireball costs less mana now, and Frozen Orb is stronger, more damage on the explosion, and more vulnerable chance. So all of this definitely goes in the right direction in my opinion. Those are definitely the weaker skills on Sorc. Probably not enough to make Fireball really a thing, but we'll see. I'm not sure about Frozen Orb. Maybe it's going to be kind of nice now. The vulnerable application in general has been improved on the Sorc though, with also the Ice Blades. So you see this here, they have a 40% chance now, so it's much easier to proc vulnerable with this. And they buffed some other small things here, like the Blizzard a little bit, the Crackling Energy a little bit, and also stuff like Lightning Spear. I'm not sure if that will really help the archetype, but it also opens up maybe some other options here with Crackling Energy builds. And together with the Incinerate and the Charged Bolts buffs, they also buffed their corresponding unique items. So there's like a wand and a staff that are used for those skills. So it can be quite interesting to try out. And there's also a pretty significant buff to the Chain Lightning aspect, which now has a 40% chance to jump to 2 more targets. So if you put this on an amulet or a two-handed weapon, you can get even more chance. This is kind of nice, and probably a bit of an enabler there for Chain Lightning, but probably not really top tier builds. And some other small buffs here for some of those powers here, especially Singed Extremities. This is slow after Immobilize wears off. You can actually slow stuff by 90% if you put it on the amulet. That can be quite funny to see. And as you can see, they also buffed some of the other resource aspects. So Incendiary is like burning damage has a chance to restore mana. And then Concentration is extra mana regeneration when you haven't taken damage. So usually people just use like the resource aspects that give you resources after using a cooldown. And maybe now it's not really as necessary to just like throw in like 4 different cooldowns in your build or so, just so you can proc that all the time. you may be able to solve your mana issues with other ways. So that's kind of cool. It's probably not enough to really break this, like, you know, teleport, flame shield, ice armor meta, basically, where every single sword build has exactly those 3 skills. And then also a Frost Nova for the vulnerable. So there's definitely more work to be done here, but at least it's moving in the right direction, in my opinion. As I said at the start, there's definitely more in this patch, and I just recommend you to read through the whole thing. There's a lot of bug fixes, a lot of other minor adjustments, but there's no mention of like anything like search for stash or so. There's no mention of party play getting nerfed, for example, maximum distance on XP share in dungeons or so. So I think that some party group farming metas in Mountain Dungeons are going to be absolutely through the roof now. Like 50 million XP per hour is actually not clickbait anymore. So this is what we're going to look at. So it's going to be pretty wild. In any case, this is the roundup for the patch. Let me know what you think about it. Maybe something that I missed here, or that it didn't really go into too much detail. Maybe there's something that you're really hyped for with the buffs. Let me know. And I'm going to be trying it all out myself soon. So stay tuned for that. Hope you liked this one, and see you guys next time.